You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hidden. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Honorable ladies and gentlemen, you are the light of our Bahamian world. You make decisions that reflect the integrity of your character and the passion of your purpose. You are the persons to whom our young people look for wise and mature leadership. They read your statements in the newspapers and watch your relationships with your family and the wider society. You model for them more than party loyalty. You represent a national vision today and for their future. Do not allow petty politics, small-mindedness, or the need to be conspicuous to compromise your spiritual principles, moral values, or better self. Never forget to let your light shine before your God, the world, and all of us who love you, pray for you daily, and want only the best for you and your family. Let us see your good works in every ministry of government, in every constituency, in every international committee and board. May your life bring glory to God. May this be your high calling, your motivating factor, your mission and your goal. May we all be inspired to take the higher road, to walk the narrow way, to take our lights out from under the bushel basket and let our lights of Christian witness shine for all the world to see. Let us pray. Lord our God, we thank you for the death and resurrection of your Son, Jesus Christ. We pray that each one of us will remember that with your light in our hearts, we become light in often very dark world. We pray for our Governor General, our Prime Minister, our Leader of the Opposition, and all cabinet ministers and MPs and others in national leadership positions. Bless them with opportunities to use their positions of influence for the greatest and highest good, bringing glory to your name and a blessing on our people. Let us pray together. Our Father,
hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Johnson, Bob Jones, Michael Bush, Miriam Matthews, Emmanuel, Reese Chipman, Ruben Lanning, Ricky Matthews, Shannon Marquardt, Rice, Donna Ferguson, Dennis Johnson, Michael Brock, Chester Bishop.
Good morning, honorable members. Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it's the Lord's purpose that will prevail. So in all things, we must give God thanks and give him glory. Introduction and swearing in of new members. Laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Bahamas Maritime Authority Annual Reports and Accounts 2018.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that document to lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
And Mr. Speaker.
Statements and communications by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Southern Shores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's always with a great sense of gratitude that I rise in this place. Grateful, first of all, to Almighty God, and secondly, to the good people of Southern Shores, who has shown the confidence in me to allow me to be here. Mr. Speaker, I smiled as the chaplain shared the devotion this morning and talked about the light, because my communication is centered around that very same thing. I'm pleased, if you would allow me, Mr. Speaker, to point out that we have in the gallery one Mr. Kevin E. Cartwright. Kevin Cartwright is an author, and he's accompanied by Mr. Goody, Mr. Gowdy, sorry. Mr. Gowdy, you are good. So, and Ms. Kelly from the Ministry of Social Services. Mr. Speaker, members would be aware that matters related to persons with disabilities are included within the portfolio of the Ministry of Social Services and Urban Development. Since assuming this office, I've had the opportunity to meet with many members of the community of persons with disabilities, as well as their families, NGOs, and other stakeholders. These individuals are working assiduously, along with my ministry, toward the further advancement of the provisions of the Persons with Disabilities Equal Opportunity Act. Mr. Speaker, since its enactment, it has been noted that too many commercial or publicly used buildings remain partially accessible or only partially retrofitted with regard to the accommodation of persons with disabilities. And too many services remain limited with regard to the extent that they fully meet the needs of this community. We in the Ministry of Social Services and Urban Development are committed to the ongoing promotion and support of the rights of persons with disabilities. This commitment is further demonstrated by the priority that Parliamentary Secretary Mr. Michael Folks has given to reviewing the Act with the view of ensuring that regulations are in place by the end of this calendar year. And in so doing, we also seek to raise public awareness throughout our communities on this subject. Mr. Speaker, in this regard, I applaud the work of the many NGOs that contribute to this effort in so many ways and ensure the well-being of persons with disabilities on a daily basis. Too many programs developed in support of this community by these NGOs significantly augment the services that are provided through our relevant government ministries and departments. It is a task that the government cannot undertake in its entirety, and we urge more members of the public to join us in this initiative. The Ministry of Social Services and Urban Development has been able to provide some financial support to some of these organizations by way of subventions from our annual budget. However, we realize that the operating costs of these NGOs and the contributions that they make within our communities to these social causes far exceed the amount of the grant that we offer. In acknowledging the work of these groups of individuals who support these efforts, however, we must not overlook the contributions that persons with disabilities themselves make to our society. On Friday, 26 April 2019, it was a pleasure for me, Mr. Speaker, to receive a copy of the book Revelations of a Silent Heart. From Mr. Kevin Cartwright. It's autumn. Who is blind, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Cartwright is here in the chamber today, as I mentioned, and I would like for him to stand so that we can acknowledge him. Thank you very much, Kevin. Kevin, we congratulate you on the recent publication of your book and welcome you and your representatives here with us today. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Cartwright was born and raised in the Bahamas and is a very talented poet. He holds an associate and a bachelor's degree from West Virginia State University and currently teaches language arts at the Erin Gilmore School for the Blind. He also proudly serves as a member of the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities. His recently published book of poems demonstrates the gifts he possesses as a writer. His collection of poetry explores a variety of topics, from love and relationships to his personal journey as an individual who is blind and who seeks to enjoy the same rights and freedoms as many other individuals. Mrs. Speaker, I must confess that I haven't had the opportunity to read all of his poems, but I will admonish those of us who have been out of the love game for a while that there is something in here. There's some sweet words in here for those who need to get the rap together, sharpen up. But I did have the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to read one of the poems that I thought is very timely to what we're doing here, and it's found on page 97, Achieving Our Dreams. And with your permission, I'd like to share that with us. Together, we can transform our Bahamian landscape one step at a time. And when the warrior within us starts to grow weary, we must never cease to climb. If we set aside our differences and unify our efforts as one team, we can be far more effective in achieving equality and justice while living out the Bahamian dream. In the spirit of collaboration, we have the power to change and create a sustainable and resilient society for all, where the full and equal participation of persons with disabilities is viewed as something normal and nothing strange. We must educate ourselves on the many pieces of law that have been aptly penned to protect our rights from being violated by anyone, including family, foe, and even friend. We must hold firmly to our human rights and freedoms and let no one take them away. We must put an end to the blatant disrespect and discrimination felt by persons with disabilities every moment of every day. Mr. Speaker, that is the essence of what we in the Ministry of Social Services and Urban Development is seeking to sensitize, advance, promote, that each individual would personalize and come to accept that if we live long enough and say enough good mornings, there's a chap called arthritis that will render us with some form of disability. There's another chap called cataract that will render us with some form of disability. There are accidents and incidents. There are bad living habits that we are all familiar with. And so if we here commit to ensuring inclusion and facilitate persons with disabilities, we might very well be preparing a place for ourselves. Mr. Speaker, with those few words, I want to invite my colleagues to purchase copies of the book. I'm holding a $20 bill from our very own in-house poet, Brother Pintard, who has, from yesterday, ensured Brother Cartwright that he gets the first autographed copy. So you owe Brother Pintard an autographed copy. I'm holding the $20 bill. You will get a list of the other colleagues here present who will also be purchasing a book. Mr. Speaker, I congratulate Mr. Cartwright.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Yes. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for... Oh, just a moment. Order that the communication be brought up. Yes. Order that the book and communication to lie on the table. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Angleston.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I wanted to join in the chorus established by the member for Southern Shores and the Minister for Social Services, and on behalf of the official opposition, to congratulate Mr. Cartwright. Mr. Cartwright is actually well known to me. He was actually my constituent before the boundaries changed. And so I have firsthand knowledge of his absolute continuous struggle and against the tide, really, and all of the challenges that he has faced over the years, and the difficulties and the hardships, and nevertheless has continued to push and probe and agitate and to progress in his own personal development. And he's now done something very important. He is now added to the cultural litany of our National Library, and for that we are very grateful. We want to congratulate him because he is in truth a demonstrative example to all of us who, whatever hardships or setbacks that we face, and in particular for himself to be sight impaired, which is a major one, that nevertheless you can open up a window to the world that is absolutely beautiful and untouchable. And so we want to congratulate him and to encourage this. I know what is his first in many books. I believe that there's more to come. And to say to him that the country appreciates his efforts and his contribution, and that he continues to go from strength to strength, from creative work to creative work in this country. Thank you, Speaker.
Further statements and communications by ministers. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Seabreeze.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I begin, I would too like to congratulate Mr. Cartwright, members of the Disabilities Commission, for being here this morning and for the landmark achievement today. Certainly we are grateful in the society and for persons who understand the importance of persons with disability and their role and our function to ensure that they are enabled to do equally what others can do. And so I do congratulate you and thank you so much for your role in our society. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House of Assembly a communication on the IAAF World Relays 2019 held in Tokyo, Japan. Mr. Speaker, the government of the Bahamas is known to be visible at major international competitions, particularly when our athletes are among the competitors. This House would recall that most recently we chartered flights for our athletes to attend the regional Carifta swim and track and field meets, accommodating large delegations in both Barbados and Cayman Islands respectively. And as a result, we reaped wonderful rewards abounding in regional and international recognition and personal best for our athletes, among other accomplishments. Mr. Speaker, the International Association of Athletic Federations, or IAAF as it is known, held the 4th edition of the World Relays for the first time outside of the Bahamas for 2 days, from the 11th to the 12th of May 2019 in Yokohama, Tokyo, Japan. This World Series event of the IAAF was birthed here in the Bahamas in 2014. It was again held in 2015 and 2017, respectively, with the landmark appearance of track and field superstar Usain Bolt, who performed at our very own Thomas A. Robinson Stadium. Due to its success in the Bahamas, the IAAF has incorporated the event into its official international track and field calendar, with the relays now being a fixture and held every 2 years. The event, Mr. Speaker, allows our national athletes as well as international contenders the opportunity to meet, to compete, and qualify for the World Championship Games, which will be held later this year, and for the prestigious Olympic Games, which will be held in 2020, also in Tokyo, Japan. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas remains proud to have been a part of this great development in the arena of track and field, and we are thankful to the IAAF for their confidence in the Bahamas to lead the charge in this respect, not once, not twice, but on 3 occasions. Mr. Speaker, we are also grateful to the Bahamas Association of Athletic Associations, or B3As as they are called, which saw to the registration of 2 teams during this year's event. That is the men's 4x400 and the men's 4x200. Regrettably, Mr. Speaker, our women were not represented at the competition, which meant that we were unable to defend our title in the 4x400 mixed relay. As is customary, Mr. Speaker, a delegation was present to represent the Bahamas, inclusive of myself, Deputy Permanent Secretary Darren Turnquest, Director of Sports Mr. Timothy Munnings, and IAAF Councilwoman Mrs. Pauline Davis Thompson. Mr. Speaker, while in Japan, we as representatives of the government embraced the opportunity to meet the officials of the IAAF and other important stakeholders in the international track and field arena, who all, Mr. Speaker, as expected, echoed their longing for another taste of the Bahamian Junkanoo dance, Bahamian food, rhythm, beat, and sounds. Mr. Speaker, Tokyo was charming and indeed welcoming, but if truth be told, there is no place like the sun and the sand and the sea and the experience of the invigorating and distinct culture of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, participating in only 2 relays, the men's 4x400 meters and 4x200 meters, respectively, a small team of athletes consisting of Stephen Gardner, Alonzo Russell, O.J. Ferguson, Stephen Newbold, Chavez Hart, Cliff Recius, Teray Smith, Andre Newbold, Rico Moultrie, and Anthony Adderley courageously sought to challenge the world and represent the country with pride. Injury, unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, is a part of sport, and Stephen Gardner experienced inflammation of an existing injury which ultimately prevented his participation and that of the 4x400 meter team. Mr. Speaker, with much hope, our second team, the 4x200 relay team, soldiered on. Noteworthy, the team initially placed second in their heat, which resulted in them advancing to the finals in a season best time of and 22.40. As fate would have it, a dropped baton during the exchange between second and third legs and a lane infraction ultimately resulted in our 4x200 team being disqualified. Mr. Speaker, this unfortunate happening, I know that the athletes would have grown from this experience, and this will serve as a motivator to train harder and to excel in future meets. Nonetheless, I wish to commend the athletes who together finished that race despite their disappointing experiences. Mr. Speaker, as the chief agency responsible for the regulation of sports in the country, I intend to engage all sporting stakeholders in considering ways and means of ensuring that we fulfill our mandate to promote, to encourage, and to develop all of our athletes and those aspiring in their respective fields. Mr. Speaker, with respect to this particular event, my ministry would have published a press release on the 16th of May, 2019, essentially extending our gratitude to World Relays 2019 Team Bahamas, inclusive of our athletes for their valiant efforts, the coaches for their guidance, and the executives of the B3As for their representation, and, Mr. Speaker, the supporters for their attendance at the event. We dare not forget to thank our #1 fans, the Bahamian public, who continue to support our athletes in the good and in the difficult times, and who cheered us on at home. Mr. Speaker, I wish also to congratulate Lord Sebastian Coe, President of the IAAF, and the entire IAAF family, together with the government of Japan, for a successful 2019 4th edition of the World Relays. Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me not to recognize our local IAAF representative, Councilwoman, Mrs. Pauline Davis-Thompson, and to thank her for keeping the Bahamas relevant and on the international track and field map. By extension, we also thank Mr. Mike Sands, who is a consultant at the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, and the entire team at the Department of Sports, whose tireless efforts so often go unnoticed. We thank the government of the Bahamas for its continued commitment to invest in and believe in our athletes. May the good Lord bless the sport of track and fields, and may he continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, I do thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Further statements and communications by ministers. Communications by the clerk. Thank you. Messages from the Governor General. Honorable members, messages from the Senate. Honorable members, I'm in possession of message number 29 from the Honorable Senate. The Honorable Senate acquaints the Honorable House of Assembly that they have agreed to the following resolution accompanying message number 31 dated the 1st of May 2019 from the Honorable House of Assembly. And that resolution resolved that the House approve A, the grant of a right-of-way over certain hereditaments in the first schedule, B, the sale by the treasurer to the purchaser of a fee simple of the hereditaments listed in the second schedule, and C, the sale by the treasurer to N.C. Macduff's Limited of the fee simple of the hereditaments listed in the fourth schedule. Moving along on the order of business, motions for leave of absence, leave to resign seat, and new writs. Presentation of petition. Presentation of reports of committees. Adoption of reports of committees. First reading of bills. Second reading and committal of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable.
Mr. Speaker, I stand, Mr. Speaker, to move a motion that, Mr. Speaker, I stand to move a motion that bill number 11 on the House agenda be withdrawn. We have spoken to Her Majesty's loyal opposition and have gotten their agreement that we can withdraw bill number 11. So I do move a motion now that bill number 11 be withdrawn from the agenda.
Second.
Second. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded
We just wanted to do that while you're still here.
that bill number 11 on the agenda, which is a bill for an act to establish a body to be known as the National Intelligence Agency, be removed from the agenda. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The motion is carried and bill number 11 on the agenda is struck from the agenda. Also, honorable members, I'm in possession of the communication by the honorable member for Seabreeze, and I now order that the communication do lie on the table. Second reading and committal of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Mount Moriah.
I think you want to miss this one. Oh, yeah.
Where y'all going? Okay, where you going, man?
Be more than happy to have your time. Probably lead that. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The law is never finished, as it is always a work in progress. Therefore, it will never be complete. For those of us fortunate enough to serve in this honorable House, where laws are made, we have an obligation to influence cultural changes through those laws. While some legislation may bring about simple changes, others are more complex and require some soul searching. Yet, let it be known that as difficult as it may be, how a government passes law determines how it values its citizens and society. So today I ask my colleagues on both sides of the floor, and right now we only have on one side, not to give way to your emotions and let the weather of today distract your acknowledgement that the climate of this era demands that nations, both industrial and developing, explore the role that intelligence gathering plays in preserving democracies. Mr. Speaker, for indeed, it is an era that is being defined by the lessons of September 11th, terrorist attack on the United States of America. The aftermath revealed that the lack of synergy between intelligence networks minimized the chances of the incidents being thwarted. As such, the need for an effective, synergistic, and efficient intelligence network cannot be understated. The proposed implementation of the National Crime Intelligence Agency will allow the Bahamas to gain a comprehensive view of its security environment and potential threats therein. This will allow for forewarning of criminal activities while seeking to protect the values, belief, and cultural norms that makes us Bahamians. Mr. Speaker, before I begin my substantive contribution on the historic debate, let me acknowledge the Almighty Father, whom I am indeed grateful for his continued blessings, the unwavering support of my wife Stacy and our two beautiful children, Joshua and Kai. I am indeed blessed for the love and moral support of my family. I am also grateful for the people of the Mount Moriah constituency who continue to repose their trust in me as their representative. By extension, the FNM Constituency Council of Mount Moriah and the community associations of Yellow Elder Gardens, Millennium Gardens, and Stapleton Gardens, who also continue to display their unselfish commitment to service and empowerment for the betterment of their communities and our nation as a whole. It is our singular honor, and my singular honor, Mr. Speaker, to lead the Ministry of National Security and the hard-working staff, in addition to the Parliamentary Registration Department, the brave men and women of law enforcement, and that is the Royal Bahamas Police Force, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, and the Bahamas Department of Corrections. Mr. Speaker, for this, I say thank you to the Honorable Member for Kalani, the Most Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Hubert Minnis, for his confidence in me and his strong leadership. There was a time, Mr. Speaker, not too long ago, when due to weak and compromised leadership, our country was at risk for failure. But thank God, a new day has dawned in which hope, confidence, and trust has been restored. Thanks to the Honorable Member for Kalani, for under your leadership, sir, the darkness brought on by the previous administration has been replaced by the light of hope and prosperity. Mr. Speaker, we are now living in a Bahamas where Bahamians no longer have to hold their heads down in shame. Further, investors and our allies are keen to do business in our country once again because they know and understand that we are a transparent government, a government for the people and about the people. Mr. Speaker, 2 years ago, when we came into office as a government, we met an agency in place which was referred to as the National Intelligence Agency. And there were no legislative frameworks, policies, or guidelines which articulated its authority and roles and responsibilities. Additionally, this agency worked in isolation with no respect and support from local law enforcement and agencies, inclusive of the Royal Bahamas Police Force, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, the Bahamas Department of Corrections, the Customs Department, and the Immigration Department. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, the leadership within these agencies stated that it was never communicated how this mysterious agency functioned and its purpose in the collective fight against crime in our nation. Subsequently, Mr. Speaker, during our assessment of this agency, it confirmed the concerns as expressed by the local law enforcement leaders. We were therefore left with no other choice, Mr. Speaker, but to disband this agency until we were able to enact appropriate legislation, as we're doing today, that would govern such an agency and bring about a level of transparency, respect for law in our democratic society. Mr. Speaker, defining national security threat is important because of the critical risk it poses to society in the form of government, businesses, educational and financial institutions, and or laypersons. The core function of law enforcement is to navigate from an evidentiary perspective. Meanwhile, intelligence is premonitory, which seeks to collect, analyze, and disseminate information of value so as to stop, avert, and or to disrupt any danger or threat. While successive governments have sought to strengthen armed forces, we have lagged behind in doing the same for the intelligence component. The latter, Mr. Speaker, is more comprehensive and encapsulates variables of the former. In this 21st century, Mr. Speaker, nations have to predetermine threats against national security and the sovereignty of its citizens. Mr. Speaker, therefore, as further reviewed and consultation, we have sought to improve the legislation by incorporating a crime focus. It is the goal of this administration to develop a local focus along with monitoring international threats. The country has to effectively manage crime as it is directly tied to the growth of our economy. According to Niles, high crime rates can and does take a toll on Caribbean countries. Economic growth, including the Bahamas. The IDB in 2017 noted that the direct crime-related costs range from 3 to 5% of GDP in the Caribbean every year, compared to 2% of GDP in advanced economies. It is believed that if Caribbean nations were to lower their crime rates, this would in turn experience growth and GDP rates between 0.4 to 0.7% higher per year. Mr. Speaker, therefore, this piece of legislation will now be known as the National Crime Intelligence Agency, hereafter known as NCIA, as opposed to the National Intelligence Agency. Mr. Speaker, this proposed NCIA bill seeks to establish a government agency with responsibility for gathering intelligence that may very well enhance the security of the Bahamas. This bill is distinct from other national intelligence structures such as those in the United Kingdom, Canada, the United States, and Australia, mainly due to this governmental construct. However, there are common components which will help to facilitate global standardization and help to create an effective or optimal national intelligence system for the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas must enact legislation guided by other model legislation for the region and global community where there is almost uniformity between all countries as it relates to their efforts in the fight for national humanity as demonstrated in the security of their citizens. Mr. Speaker, significantly, the NCIA will stand astride both the Bahamas' domestic security measures and foreign intelligence efforts. It will have an identifiable structure for accountability to the country so as to ensure transparency. Further, it will have a centralized location where all intelligence-related data, both domestic and foreign, can be analyzed. Essentially, the NCIA will be the main assessment agency as it will play a wider role in gathering, analyzing, coordinating, disseminating, and reflecting the complex overlap of both domestic and international security issues. Mr. Speaker, this new development in national security is a necessary change that has been long contemplated and is arguably overdue. Mr. Speaker, the government of the Bahamas over the last 5 years has spent between $286 million and $453 million for the respective 5 branches of law enforcement. A considerable amount of those funds allotted were for personnel to engage in intelligence-driven activities. Most of the agencies, which I make no criticism of, conduct their operations covertly, all of whom have significant individual powers to gather intelligence and the protection of our national security. Simultaneously, all successive governments have brought forward and passed key pieces of legislation to advance the national security of our country and bring into practices in alignment with both regional and global standards. Mr. Speaker, this proposed bill serves to add to the annals of historic legislation designed to propel our nation forward and upward in its development. With all of the new legislation, new powers and new responsibilities of the 5 branches of law enforcement, there has been no substantial coordinated efforts or effective oversight. This new proposed legislation seeks to accomplish this significant milestone. Mr. Speaker, today I shall explain how the NCIA will reflect the necessary and continued growth in national security, and how this agency is an important arsenal in the defense of a free society with all of its associated civil liberties and basic human values. Mr. Speaker, more importantly, it will seek to protect and preserve the very culturalism of what makes the Bahamas unique, including its most valuable resource, its people. I would like to note that the establishment of the NCIA will not conflict with our current or future democracies and civil liberties. Of course, this will be undergirded with properly overseen and controlled mechanisms to ensure that it serves the purpose to which it was designed, that is the security of every resident and the national security of this, our nation. Mr. Speaker, this bill seeks to align our nation with other global states in which security intelligence services operate on the basis of a separate law, thereby defining its respective operational mandate. According to VICUCA, countries that had legislation governing intelligence gathering avoided an ad hoc practice and reactionary decisions when crises occur. I caution and remind colleagues of the chaos after September 11 terrorist attack, or how a country such as New Zealand was targeted because it was viewed as peaceful and unsuspecting, which is similar to us. In the former, approximately 2,977 persons, Mr. Speaker, who ranged between the ages of 2 to 85 years of age, were killed. The former attack partly resulted from the lack of coordinated and systematic intelligence gathering and sharing between agencies within the United States, tepid responses to earlier attacks, and a failure to grasp the magnitude of the terrorist ambition. Meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, in the latter, 51 persons died from the Census Act, which could have been averted with better coordinated intelligence gathering. In light of this, Mr. Speaker, this latest attack, the Security and Intelligence Services of New Zealand warned against complacency and the naive thinking that it cannot happen to us. Mr. Speaker, this preliminary component of this bill, as indicated in Part 1, Clause 3, articulates the main objective of the Act, which is to establish a body. The said body, to be known as the National Crime Intelligence Agency, will serve to meet the needs of the Bahamas and the specific context in which it will operate. The NCIA will have 3 purposes, with the first focusing on coordinating intelligence gathering and joint strategic planning among the heads of national law enforcement agencies, commonly referred to as HONLIA. HONLIA is made up of both law enforcement agencies and government departments, all of whom have responsibility to maintain a reduced criminal presence in the Bahamas. The second objective of the NCIA will be to collect, by investigation or otherwise, information and intelligence with respect to activities that may, on reasonable grounds, be suspected of constituting threats to the people and security of the Bahamas. The third objective of the NCIA will be to coordinate effective networking between regional and international partners. Mr. Speaker, I would like to pause a moment to highlight some of the threats which we currently face in our country. The Bahamian people are at risk for counter-terrorist activities, including the targeting of assets, financial and otherwise. The central bank noted that the Bahamas lost some $7.8 million in fraud complaints as a result of financial-related fraud in 2018. Further, Mr. Speaker, the strategic geographical location positioning makes our country an ideal shipping route for transnational organized crimes such as human trafficking and smuggling and drugs and small arms trafficking and money laundering, all related to the same, and which pose significant financial, socio-economic, and terroristic threats to our nation. Mr. Speaker, on the domestic front, Bahamians are involved in all of the above-mentioned illegal, illicit activities, as we are now a part of a global community. However, irrespective of race and religion, political divide, we can all agree that the ramifications of drugs and guns on our streets are having the most undesirous effect. Mr. Speaker, and yes, while crime is trending down, the shipment of guns and drugs fueled by an active demand and a constant threat is a constant threat to our national security and development. Our young people, whom are the future, are at great risk if we fail to take this quantum leap, which would serve to secure and protect the very culturalism of what makes us unique as a nation. Mr. Speaker, consequently, the Bahamas does not grow cocoa plants, which are used to make the highly addictive stimulant known as cocaine. However, our strategic geographical location has plagued the national security of our nation when it comes to drugs and guns. Between 2012 and 2018, approximately 1,424.4 pounds of cocaine and 6,856.4 pounds of marijuana were seized. There was an average of 1,432.3 arrests made for all types of drugs, including ecstasy tablets, powdered cocaine, liquid cocaine, marijuana, and marijuana plants. Mr. Speaker, of the total arrests, there was an average of 1,029 cases, which resulted in 1,179 persons being prosecuted. It should be noted that while Bahamian nationals made up the largest group for persons arrested for drugs, persons from as far away as Turkey were involved in the transshipment of drugs into our country. Mr. Speaker, this further highlights the need for the gathering of intelligence as crime are now transnational in nature. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas does not manufacture guns either. However, the gun epidemic is closely tied to the transshipment of drugs. Further, more often than not, small arm weapons greatly affect our incidence of homicides on our streets. Between 2012 and 2018, approximately 602 or 84.4% of the 731 homicides involved firearms. Consequently, Mr. Speaker, or concurrently, of the 31 murders for this year, approximately 27 or 87% involved firearms. Between 2013 and April 2019 of this year, approximately 1,486 pistols, 316 shotguns, 234 revolvers, 148 rifles, 84 imitation guns, and 18 prohibited weapons, inclusive of flare guns, BB guns, and machine guns, were recovered by law enforcement. Mr. Speaker, so the obvious question then becomes, are the interrelated domestic and transnational issues of national security worth protecting? The practical and patriotic answer is yes. In context then, what does protecting a nation's national security mean, and how do we do it? Mr. Speaker, those small group of individuals, whether in the Bahamas or not, who wish to exploit our nation and its people will naturally organize themselves and make plans covertly Therefore, law enforcement has to use covert means to expose them. Mr. Speaker, with the proper legal authority, we have to collect intelligence so as to make known their intentions. Then, the information collected has to be analyzed and assessed, thereby using the results of the findings to counter any potential harm to citizens and or to our nation's national security. Mr. Speaker, of course, it may also mean protecting that which is threatened or providing the grounds to advise and devise ways to make the target more difficult to attack. This distinct clarification is necessary because it provides significant practical importance. There is now no doubt in the minds of law enforcement whom we are targeting. Specifically, NCIA will provide our respective law enforcement community with enabling information to take the necessary action against dangerous organizations and individuals, both locally and abroad. Mr. Speaker, as noted, the purpose of this bill is not to intrude in the lives of law-abiding citizens. Such interferences in the lives of law-abiding citizens would not be justifiable and is not the intended purpose of this agency. Mr. Speaker, the unfounded ideas, as they are, must be addressed so that the Bahamian people, the law-abiding Bahamian people, have a full and clear understanding of the purpose and need for such an agency. Mr. Speaker, I must reiterate the need to enhance national security. Mr. Speaker, the answer to such concerns are accountability and transparency on the part of the NCIA. The former will seek to facilitate decisions on making information publicly available in various formats that will serve to improve the public's understanding of intelligence activities while protecting information when disclosures would harm the national security of our nation. The latter will seek to facilitate building capacity and responsibility that is both internally held and externally reinforced. Transparency and accountability, Mr. Speaker, must lie at the center between liberty and security, for without it, both civil rights and liberties would be in jeopardy for destruction and or dire consequences. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to address the issues of oversight and control, without which any intelligence gathering agency could put in jeopardy those very rights and liberties which it has been set up to protect. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas is a signatory to several conventions and covenants on human rights and economic, social, cultural, environmental, health, able and non-able, and the advancement of all people, which encompasses the inclusion of various vulnerable groups, socioeconomic and political concerns, including the state itself. Such conventions and covenants, while noting that each individual state has a right and responsibility to protect itself, also underscores that there must be respect for individual rights and liberties of all its citizens. Mr. Speaker, therefore, the Bahamas, as a state, can establish such an agency as the NCIA while ensuring the appropriate mechanisms are in place to protect non-threatening actors. Mr. Speaker, simultaneously, the appropriate mechanism would be established to investigate the few who threaten the well-being of our nation's security. The NCIA must and will operate within the clear frameworks of the law so as to counter genuine threats to national security. Similarly, controls will be considered so as not to allow for the abuse of power. Equally important, there must also be void of political interference. Mr. Speaker, no government and or groups will be able to or exert pressure on this agency to perform intelligence gathering operations on organizations or individuals if there is no direct concerns with genuine threat to national security. More importantly, Mr. Speaker, and more directly, the agency should never engage or imply any services or favors to any political party over another. Mr. Speaker, Part 2 of this bill, at Clause 4 through 6, facilitates an organizational structure in which the director is appointed as head of the agency. Meanwhile, Clause 5 of the same provides for the function of the agency, and Clause 6 of the powers of the agency. There are more than 123 countries with a combined total of 213 different forms of intelligence agencies globally. Most are headed by a director and associated staff based on the organization hierarchy and governmental context. Mr. Speaker, Part 3 of the bill, Clause 7 through 26, addresses the organizational management and oversight of the agency. Clause 7 of the bill speaks to the appointment of a director whom will be selected by the Governor General on the advice of the Prime Minister after consultation with the leader of the opposition. I'm sorry he's not here to hear that. Mr. Speaker, for a moment, let me underscore the importance of selecting an individual whom is fully cognizant of the principal importance of suitable transparency and accountability while leading this agency. Mr. Speaker, the director will guide the vision of the agency, and he or she will ensure that all personnel at all respective levels will respect and regard the established legal framework as fundamental to its purpose and action. The director's main function will be to protect the Bahamas, its people, and the government against attempts by any person or individuals or organizations who wish to use coercive or clandestine means to advance their own interests. Equally, Mr. Speaker, equally important is the need to protect the essential elements of the Bahamian democracy against attempts to destroy or subvert them. The director will be ultimately accountable for the operations of the agency, including its efficiency and ensuring that it remains fully independent of any personal or political influence. Mr. Speaker, the function of the NCIA as articulated in Clause 5, which primarily are, among other purposes, 2, A, collect by investigation or otherwise to the extent that is strictly necessary. B, to analyze and retain information and intelligence related to activities that may, or reasonable grounds, be suspected of constituting threats to the security of the Bahamas. C, to coordinate intelligence gathering. D, to cooperate with and assist a law enforcement agency in the gathering or provision of intelligence. E, establish channels of communications with overseas intelligence and security focal points for the promotion and exchange of information and intelligence. F, to provide the National Security Council with information relating to security matters or criminal activities that are relevant to exercise or any lawful power or the performance of any lawful duty or function. And G, do all such lawful things as are incidental or conducive to the attainment of the lawful objective of the agency. The agency may perform its functions under subsection 1 within or outside of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, the NCIA will be comprised of both law enforcement personnel representing the heads of law enforcement agencies and civilians with specialized skills. The necessary personnel as laid out in Clause 10 through 14 of the bill. In accordance, the director must ensure that personnel only engage in intelligence gathering that falls within the purview of its operational policies and procedures. Mr. Speaker, all necessary and applicable actions are to safeguard the agency's investigation and are proportionate to the threat. Mr. Speaker, the men and women whom are expected to comprise the personnel will be drawn from a variety of backgrounds and with a wide range of expertise and academic qualifications. Most importantly, They will be required to have the relevant work skills of today. They will be chosen based on their judgment, impartiality, and integrity and trustworthiness, all of which are expected to contribute to the required ethos. Inevitably and unavoidably, the goal is to have an agency in which the public must have confidence in. Mr. Speaker, globally, it is a common practice to keep intelligence gathering confidential. Confidentiality is not imposed for its own sake, as it is not an end in itself. Mr. Speaker, evidently, nothing in this world is done in isolation, and diplomatic synergy is essential in the security climate. As lessons from September 11 terrorist attack on the United States have revealed that the lack of collaboration between intelligence networks reduced chances of incidents being prevented. As such, Mr. Speaker, the need for an effective and an efficient intelligence network cannot be understated. All nations must be prudent in their efforts to gather and share intelligence to suppress criminal activities. The Bahamas is no different, and the NCIA bill is a testament to that global commitment. Mr. Speaker, Clause 6 of the bill provides for the powers of the agency. The main objective is for the agency to comply with two principal operational modus operandi, in which it must be effective and work within our democratic structure. Whereas, in carrying out its function, the agency may, A, with the approval of the minister, enter into a written arrangement with any department, and the Royal Bahamas Police Force, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, the Bahamas Customs Department, and the Bahamas Department of Immigration. Mr. Speaker, this will allow the agency to operate free of silos and engage in effective, uninterrupted, multilateral partnerships which will allow for access to pertinent information regarding the safety and security of our nation. Mr. Speaker, in addition, the agency will have more speed in gathering and disseminating crucial data, thereby allowing the country the ability to prepare and respond to time-sensitive threats. There will also be insights which will need a greater cultural and professional understanding by respective agencies on particular issues, which in turn will allow the respective law enforcement agencies to liaise and work in partnership to perform direct actions to solve a particular problem which threaten or may threaten our nation. Subsequently, Mr. Speaker, the agency will be able to conduct such investigations as required for the purpose of providing security assessment to national security councils in relation to the defense of the Bahamas, or to conduct of its international affairs, assist the Minister of Foreign Affairs and his ministry in the collection of information or intelligence relating to the capabilities, intentions, or activities of any foreign state. Mr. Speaker, in essence, the NCIA will serve to locate, access, gather, interpret, and disseminate information related to the national security of the Bahamas, and all which the government needs but cannot obtain from other external sources. Mr. Speaker, the members of the law enforcement community collectively, along with regional partners as necessary, will play a significant role in ensuring that the efforts of these agencies are held in the highest standards. Mr. Speaker, the NCIA will have significant powers which will come with much responsibilities in carrying out their intelligence gathering function. The NCIA personnel will be expected to exercise reasonable and responsible professionalism, and it is certainly an aspect that will not be taken lightly or for granted. The exercise of its powers will be within the law and will seek oversight and control to avoid nefarious action. Such approaches, Mr. Speaker, will be vital in providing rigorous and independent checks and balances on the operations of the agency. Mr. Speaker, while some may question the integrity of the agency as it relates to exercising its powers ethically or inquire whether the agency will be engaged in intelligence investigations that are similar to the police, rest assured there is a difference. Mr. Speaker, the works of the agency is quite different from the police work and will require different methods, training, and procedures. Further, it is rather difficult for any organization or entity required to work in the field of intelligence gathering to adequately satisfy all of the noise in the market. Mr. Speaker, the NCIA will support law enforcement in executing their respective mandates. The agency will allow law enforcement agencies to spend more time and resources on their core function and discipline. Intelligence gathering has become more specialized over the years due to the growth, sophistication, and the globalized nature of transnational organized criminal networks, whose impacts are so devastating and far-reaching. Their potential to destabilize and overthrow democracies are all too real. Mr. Speaker, consequently, this predicament is one of the costs of providing modern-day security, especially in light of the daunting mandate. Considering the climate of this era, it is one which we as a nation must embrace. However, being mindful to strike the right balance between the security of our nation and its democracy. It should be noted that intelligence bodies in other jurisdictions like the United States, Canada, and Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago all have similar functions and dilemmas regarding oversight and function. Mr. Speaker, in light of the current situation in Venezuela, the crisis has unleashed national security threats to the two island nations of Trinidad and Tobago, Colombia, and other regional countries. The problem which plagues Venezuela can no longer be considered exclusively a Venezuelan problem, confined to its borders. There has been an increase in trade in Venezuelan source guns and drugs brought by refugees to other islands and neighboring nations due to basic food and personal needs, and in turn, there is an increasing crime pandemic. Drugs and guns in Trinidad and Tobago means they will eventually travel north to other islands, including the Bahamas possibly. Mr. Speaker, an agency such as the NCIA will greatly assist in intelligence gathering, which, as previously alluded, is premonitory action to warn and avert the negative effects of guns and drug trafficking and cyber crime and money laundering to the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Clause 9 of this bill, the Minister may provide the Director with directions of a general or specific nature to be observed with relations to the performance of the agency, of its function, or the exercise of its powers, or the exercise of the powers of the Director. The Minister may vary or replace any directions of the agency. Further, the Minister shall cause a copy of the directions to be given to the Prime Minister and the Review Committee. It should be noted that the Review Committee will be a body appointed to provide oversight of the NCIA with respect to the administration, expenditure, and performance. The Prime Minister should then provide an unedited copy of any general or specific directions to the Leader of the Opposition. Oh, he's missing a lot today. Mr. Speaker, but he's been missing a lot for a while. Mr. Speaker, given the sensitive nature of security threats, the task of designing a system to provide effective governmental directions, management, and control was of the highest priority. The aforementioned described mechanism for providing directions and control is composed of a series of interlocutory elements designed to provide transparency, accountability, and control over our national security intelligence apparatus. Mr. Speaker, any abuse of power or mismanagement of operational procedures by the NCIA will have dire consequences and severe impacts on both the security of our country and or the lives of its citizens. To prevent any abuse and or mismanagement, an effective independent review and evaluation of the agency's policies and operation will be mandated. To this end, the provisions of an external review of the NCIA are addressed in Clause 15 through 24 of the bill, as entitled Oversight of the Agency, and which seeks to establish an independent body to provide agency oversight. This is standard among NATO members countries and other states with intelligence agencies. The establishment of an independent review is envisioned to ensure that any imbalances or unethical practices within the agency can be identified and corrected. This will be accomplished through review and reporting to Parliament on the activities of the agencies and to receive and investigate complaints against the agency. It also provides for the appointment and eligibility of members of the review committee and the powers of the review committee. This body shall be known as the Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament, and under Clause 15 of the bill, it shall be responsible for, you ain't holding nothing against me, do it? A, reviewing the administration and expenditure of the agency. B, reviewing generally the performance by the agency of its duties and functions. C, reviewing the observance of any guidelines given by the minister to the director pursuant to Section 9, and or D, conducting any investigations in relation to complaints made to the committee in accordance with Section 19. Mr. Speaker, it should be noted, however, that threats to national security means that some things and information are a little bit more sensitive. This is because intelligence collection is only the first step in guarding the national security of our nation. A piece of information is like a piece of a puzzle. And when a piece of information is combined with many other pieces of information, then the bigger the picture emerges. Mr. Speaker, moreover, possessing some information cannot be shared until enough is gathered and can lead to action. Mr. Speaker, the mandate of the NCIA will define the task that the agency has to perform, along with the guiding principles by which the agency should conduct its operations and measures its effectiveness. More than any other element in the operational system, the mandate reflects the overall balance required. The agency's mandate is broad enough to permit the agency to develop adequate intelligence, present present and future threats to the safety and security of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, while having clearly defined limitations to ensure respect to human rights and fundamental freedoms of all within our borders. Mr. Speaker, simultaneously, the Review Committee is an extension of the aforementioned accountability mechanism for the agency. The external review body will denote the second level of accountability, which is the external to the ministry responsible for the agency. Countries such as Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and the United States each have some combination of parliamentary, congressional, independent, and judicial oversight committees for their respective intelligence agencies. Mr. Speaker, while the mandated scope may differ, the main objective of the review body is to examine the administration, expenditure, investigate complaints, and examine the legality and propriety of the agency's activities. This check and balance framework was essential to ensure that the agency is always held accountable. I should caution, however, that it is imperative for the review committee to remain fluid and relevant as to keep pace with the intelligence community as it continues to evolve in light of the emerging threats and challenges. Therefore, as the NCIA evolves, so too will the review committee. Mr. Speaker, Clause 16 of the bill outlines the criteria for the application and eligibility of a member of the review committee. The review committee will be reflective of both houses of Parliament and shall consist of 7 persons. The requirement ensures both transparency and accountability. 5 members should be selected from the House of Assembly and 2 from the Senate. The powers of the review committee is in accordance with Clause 17 of the bill. which allow the committee to consider any particular operational matter of the agency, but only so far as the review committee and the Prime Minister are satisfied that the matter is not part of any ongoing intelligence operation, as is of significant national interest. Mr. Speaker, the review committee may consider any operational matter of the agency only so far as the Prime Minister has requested the committee to consider such matters. Matters that are considered prejudicial in the responsibility of the review committee's function may be excluded. Further, the review committee's consideration of any matter is limited to the consideration of information provided voluntarily to the review committee. Meanwhile, Clause 18 of the bill mandates that submission of an annual report to Parliament by the review committee on the discharge of its function and such other reports as appropriate concerning any aspect of its function. This report must be sent to the Prime Minister before it is laid before Parliament. The production of an annual report will allow for further oversight, as it will demonstrate the agency's accomplishments. Mr. Speaker, the report will allow the opportunity to focus on the impact that the agency has had on our country and, more importantly, the citizens. In addition, the report will also highlight the financial accountability and organizational strength of the agency. Government and the people are entitled to know if money is being spent effectively, wisely, responsibly, and consistent with prescribed legislation. Mr. Speaker, according to Clause 19 through 24, the bill addresses provisions relating to the investigations of complaint against the agency by the review committee. Upon completion of an investigation, the review committee shall provide the minister and director with a report of the findings of the investigations and its recommendations. The committee shall also report the findings to the complainant, as well as the recommendations if it's necessary. The committee will play a significant role in ensuring that the work of the NCIU has both the confidence of Parliament and the Bahamian public. This bill hopes to provide a clearly defined mandate to assist in the guidance for the agency and its personnel to function within the relevant statutory remit. What is hoped to avoid in this respect a situation in which the term national security is used loosely in order to justify everything from stealing secrets or spying on people for personal reasons or gain. Mr. Speaker, at the same time, the relevant legislation defining the threats to national security is flexible enough to allow a security intelligence service itself to scan the horizon and prepare for looming threats to the country. These threats may well be terrorist-related, serious crime, migration of people, cybercrime and ransomware, organized crime, border security, nation against nation, narcotics, small arms and weapons, and trafficking and financial crime, which seeks to undermine our financial industry or attack on our communication system. Nonetheless, mechanisms have been put in place to investigate complaints if personnel or agency fails to adhere to the rules and regulations therein. It should be noted that this is in keeping with global best practices. Mr. Speaker, Clause 25 through 26 of the bill seeks to address the provisions for communications of intelligence on behalf of the agencies, which should be made by the director or a person acting within the limits of authority conferred on the individual by the director. Meanwhile, Clause 26 of the bill prohibits disclosure of information to ensure that the identity of the human personnel are kept confidential. To ensure proper oversight, all information will be channeled through the intelligence cycle. It is important to know and explain as much as possible the importance of keeping information confidential in order to be most effective. As previously stated, Mr. Speaker, secrecy is not imposed for its own sake, as it is often not an end in itself. I would like to take this time to acknowledge that the media will also have a very important role to play in shaping the public's perception of the NCIA, in which they do and how much is shared. There will have to be shared responsibility as the safety of our nation depends on it. In conjunction with the director, information released from the agency will be monitored and, above all, should facilitate accuracy, efficiency among intelligence officials and law enforcement officials to share information with each other. I would like to make it clear that the director and employees will have to exercise strict limits and cannot do or say anything which would endanger the lives of personnel or allies or such sources, both domestic and international. Mr. Speaker, Part 4 of the bill, clauses 27 through 37, addresses the general powers of agents to conduct inquiries, searches, and arrests and seizures. The nature of the intelligence gathering is to use available resources to arrest and prosecute persons or organizations who pose a security threat to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and the people therein. Therefore, gathering intelligence is key to permitting the NCIA to abide by the rules of criminal procedure. Considering that the former is true, the NCIA will seek to request search, arrest, and seizures of various forms of information in diverse formats and from different locations. The bill takes into account the planning and carrying out of intelligence investigations that may lead to prosecution. Mr. Speaker, the NCIA will have a constant as a constant reminder the requirements necessary for a fair trial. The NCIA has specific policies on gathering intelligence, such as those laid out in Clause 27 of the bill, which gives the agency the discretion to request information and documents from the operators of aircraft and vessels. The persons who operate aircraft or vessels and refuses to answer, comply, or provide false or misleading answers or documents would have committed an offense that is punishable on summary conviction to a fine not exceeding $5,000 or imprisonment not exceeding 5 years, or both. Mr. Speaker, Clause 28 of this bill permits the agency the discretion to apply to a magistrate for a search warrant. Note, however, that such warrants are only to be used on the grounds that the magistrate is satisfied that the evidence on oath that access to records or other things found in one's place or numerous places will greatly assist in collecting intelligence as it relates to any threats to the security of the Bahamas. The clause follows allows agents to open any safe box, drawer, a parcel, or other containers in which there's reasonable cause to believe that such record, electronic device, or any nature or other things found. If deemed necessary, agents may also remove and retain any records or other things found for the purpose of inspecting or examining it, and make copies of such records in accordance with that warrant. Mr. Speaker, Clause 29 of the bill provides for the agency to seize postal articles posted by or on behalf of, addressed to, or intended to be received by a person while in the course of the post. In addition, a warrant may allow agents to open, inspect, and make copies of those contents, such as those articles. Meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, Clause 30 of the bill seeks to provide the agency with the ability under the Interception of Communication Act 2017 to apply for the appropriate warrant. The same conditions of suspecting a threat to the Bahamas defense, public safety, public order, public morality, public health, or to discharge the international obligation of the Bahamas are applied. Make no mistake, Mr. Speaker, the tension between individual privacy and national security interests has been a long and enduring one for this bill. Privacy concerns have predated the advent of the bill and or current global technology. Of course, the noise in the market is, it's none of your business, and what do you have to hide will be debated. However, the concerns for national security have changed, and the discourse and calls for more strategic, coordinated, integrated, and relevant process. These measures are being put in place for those who intend on breaking the law and putting security of our nation and its people at risk. Mr. Speaker, the NCIA will do three fundamental things, which are to determine if monitored activities are criminal or have the intent to be so in the future. Second, the agency will seek to determine the individual or organization involved in the activity. And third, any information, whether it be operators, aircraft, and/or vessels, postal communication, and/or property associated with an individual or organization engaging in criminal activity, or have the intent, will be pursued. Intelligence and/or evidence has to be collected, analyzed, and efforts made to link them in a provable way. Hence, powers of inquiry, search, arrest, and seizures are necessary steps in the aforementioned. If you don't engage or harbor individuals who seek to engage in any of the above, then you have no reason to fear this bill. It only seeks to target those whom have a desire to threaten our common way of life or existence as a people. Mr. Speaker, ethics and leadership are vital to the success of the NCIA as an agency. The men and women who will form a part of this agency will have, coming to an end, will have an unquestionable role in the security of our nation, and will often deal with the disturbing information and will sometimes operate in personal danger to obtain valuable information. Much is expected of them, and rest assured, those who fail to live up to the expectations will be expelled, and the bill provides for guidelines to ensure that the nation, to ensure this nation's safety. And in accordance with Bill 35, with Clause 35 of this bill, addresses the secrecy and highlights the need for agents to be ethical, Mr. Speaker, like other global counterparts, we have drafted this bill to seek to have a balance between the obligation of government to protect the national security of our country on one hand, and to respect the human rights and fundamental freedoms of others. It is certainly not one size fits all, and the era of intelligence gathering is composed of various interlocking features, which reflect the need for balance to maintain our democratic values. This administration sought to meet both requirements of security and requirements for democracy and fundamental rights of every resident. We should always be mindful that the fundamental purpose of the former is to secure the latter. Mr. Speaker, this bill has all the necessary mandates and functions and powers and controls, and a position within the structure of government institutions for the establishment of an effective national crime intelligence agency. Therefore, I support this bill for the future development of the national security of this our great nation. May God bless the people and the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Southern Shores.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I rise to second this beautiful, this bill. But I beg indulgence, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to, with your permission, express condolences to the family of Mr. Renan Bethel, who among loved ones he would have left behind is included a 13-year-old daughter. I'd also wish to express condolences to the relatives of Mr. Brian Smith. And in his case also, he leaves behind two young daughters, Bernicia and Briannique, 11 and 13 years. Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Speaker, as we are talking about crime and the police, it is with a heavy heart that I express condolences to the family of Police Constable 624 Sean Benjamin, who will be funeralized next week, Thursday. I had the honor and privilege to work with him. He is one who always wanted to make people smile and laugh, and so may their souls rest in peace. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of National Security and member for Mount Moriah outlined clearly the purpose of the bill. He ensured that there's no misunderstanding about what the authority of the unit is going to be, what the remit of the unit is going to be. He went to great lengths to allay any fears of persons who might be concerned that their civil liberties and privacies may be at risk or in jeopardy. The truth of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, we live in a time when persons who choose to engage in criminal activity are themselves finding innovative and creative ways to go about their actions. They are communicating with each other to find best practices in that line of work. And it is incumbent on the government, whose responsibility it is to ensure that its citizens and visitors alike are safe to work and play, that all necessary steps are taken within the confines and parameters of the law to carry out what is perceived as the core function of law enforcement agencies, which is the prevention and detection of crime. Mr. Speaker, criminals have one thing in common. They do not want to be caught. So they will go to every extent. They will go to every extent to hide what it is they would have done. But the job of the investigator is to reveal that which was artfully concealed. But Mr. Speaker, we on this side want to be proactive. We want to do less detection and more prevention. This bill will facilitate, within the confines of the law, the ability for law enforcement officers to come together with a common purpose to seek to gather the necessary intelligence that will allow for them to be able to prevent. We realize that even after a criminal would have been caught and successfully prosecuted, the matter that he or she would have committed still leaves a scar that in some instances never heals. And so if we were to place ourselves in the position where we could prevent more incidents, where we could prevent the commission of more criminal activity, I think it augurs well for the people who we have committed to serve
the people who we have committed to keep safe. I've been there, Mr. Speaker, 29 years. I've been there. I've lamented. I have lamented the shortage of certain tools and equipment, including legislation such as this. And I'm pleased, Mr. Speaker, to be a part of history where it is being brought, and it is being brought in a manner that is transparent, in a manner that ensures that there is recourse if anyone finds him or herself aggrieved, but also in a manner that tells Joe Public on the street that the persons involved in this work have a responsibility. They're responsible to you in terms of their commitment to confidentiality, not only while they serve, Mr. Speaker. I go all the way to the end in the fourth schedule of the bill, where the agents will be required to take an oath. And the oath will say, I, whatever the individual's name is, do swear and declare that I will honestly and faithfully serve and fulfill the duties that devolve upon me by reason of my employment in the National Crime Intelligence Agency, and that I will not divulge any information or facts or expressions and opinions based on such facts gained by me as a result of my employment to any unauthorized person orally or in writing without the previous endorsement of the director. I understand that these provisions apply not only during the period of my employment, but also after my employment when the agency has ceased. That, Mr. Speaker, encapsulates the whole essence of confidentiality that the public needs to be aware that will exist, that will give them the comfort of sharing necessary information, but it also speaks to the responsibility of the individual. I remember when I joined the police force in 1986, one of the instructors said, on becoming a police officer, you automatically place 1 foot in jail, and your job as a police officer is to function within the parameters of the law to keep the other foot out of prison. But Mr. Speaker, these agents, Mr. Speaker, will be coming to the same realization that there are consequences for them should they breach their responsibility. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to second this bill. I'm satisfied that this bill will have the intended effect. I'm pleased to accept, as the proposal would have indicated, that legislation continues to evolve. And I'm sure the side opposite will, with all the best intent, if they find any deficiency that could improve the bill, they will point it out. Because I'm satisfied that, like us on this side, they too are committed to the safety and security of all Bahamian people, particularly those who they have the pleasure to represent. And so I have no concerns, Mr. Speaker, that this bill will become anything controversial. This will be one of those rare opportunities when the opposition will hold hand with the government, say Kumbaya, and say any of you out there who have any criminal intent, we join in with the National Crime Intelligence Agency to ensure that you are meted with the requisite punishment. Mr. Speaker, Southern Shores is proud to second.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act to establish a body to become known as the National Intelligence Agency to provide for its functions, powers, organization, and management, and for connected purposes. As many? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the good people of Engliston who have shown themselves to be steadfast and immovable, strong, resilient, and independent. The people of Engliston are intelligent and discerning and politically astute. They watch and observe with great overstanding the political movements and machinations which unfold in the Bahamas, and they wisely assess the national policies and their meaning or lack thereof to their own welfare and well-being. Many I know are today watching or listening to these proceedings as they usually do. They observe closely the dynamics of this House. I want to thank the people of Engliston for sending me here and allowing me a voice and a presence in this legislative chamber on their behalf. They know that I will represent them in this place without fear or favor. I speak for them and for them only. But in doing so, I hope to speak for Bahamians everywhere across the length and breadth of this country. Today I rise to contribute to this debate on a bill for the establishment of the National Crime Intelligence Agency. The latest version of this bill was laid just a few days ago, and it appears that despite its fundamental implications and its terms, there's been no real and actual consultation with the Bahamian people. Also, the new bill has a fundamental difference in it, which I think is very important for the Bahamian people to know. Could it be, I'm just asking, that this government seeks to bully its way through this House, this legislation, based upon its numbers, to enact a very serious piece of legislation, and to do so, from what I am told, despite the request of the official opposition, to delay this bill, to allow for appropriate education and consultation for the Bahamian people. Mr. Speaker, our forefathers, who through political agitation and peaceful resistance and disobedience, civil disobedience, broke down the walls of oppression and created a constitution which forms the fundamental laws of this country. Articles 15 to 28 enshrines our fundamental rights and freedoms. And just to give an idea, they include protection of the right to life, protection from inhuman treatment, protection from slavery and forced labor, protection from arbitrary arrest or detention, protection to secure protection of law, provisions to secure protection of law, protection for privacy of home and other property, protections of freedom of conscience, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly and association, freedom of movement, freedom from discrimination on the grounds of grounds of race, etc. For a country such as ours, which has the ignoble history of the forced imposition of a system of slavery until abolition on the 1st of August, 1834, these immutable rights and freedoms have a true and real meaning to the Bahamian people and are of high importance, especially having regard to our history. It is understood that these rights and freedoms that I've just alluded to in our Constitution are counterbalanced by laws, but no law may infringe these fundamental rights and freedoms. No law. A proposed law is being brought here today for the creation of a new agency with new powers and with provisions of secrecy as to its operation. That agency is to be dubbed a National Crime Intelligence Agency, which is to have a wide array of powers, including those set out in clauses 27, 28, 29, and 30, which we have gone through it, but I just want to bring a different perspective to what we've just heard. And these, and as you've heard, these are being the ability to subject an operator of an aircraft or vessel to questions or production of documents without any reasonable cause or suspicion, and failure to do so is an offense which subjects a person to imprisonment of 5 years or a fine of $5,000 or both, to seize mails or other postal articles without court order and without a reasonable suspicion or cause for anything, Speaker. Even though I believe under the Interception of Communications Act there is a process, there is none in this bill. I want to refer also to clause 6, 1A2, which also says that, yes, 3, which speaks to authorizing the agency to do a number of things as it relates to offenses in the first schedule. And the first schedule is incorporated in section 6.2, which says that the minister may by order add or delete from the category of offenses specified in the first schedule. So all of these offenses are implicated into the remit of this agency. The first schedule has a number of offenses, from anti-terrorism to pornographic information or data, contrary to Sexual Offenses Act, economic crimes, offenses contrary to the Immigration Act. But my concern is that this provision allows the minister by order to add additional offenses without scrutiny, without any analysis by this Parliament, and which will have untold implications. We don't know what it means. What powers could be extended under that provision? These provisions are very likely in violation of the Constitution. To seize someone's mail without due cause or any rationale. To arrest somebody because they don't want to answer a question without reasonable cause. The powers to intercept communications through the intervention of the Attorney General. That's one of the powers that's listed, the right to intercept communications. But this bill provides it can only be done through the Attorney General, that the director of this agency can cause the Attorney General to apply for an order. And we have a concern about this. And as you recall, before a debate in this Parliament, we sought, I think we came out most in the debate dealing with the Director of Public Prosecutions. We sought to remove political personalities out of these law enforcement issues. And this retains a provision that the Attorney General will be the one who will be charged with applying for an order under the Interception of Communications Act. The Attorney General is a political personality appointed by the Prime Minister sitting in the cabinet. This was the rationale used by this administration when they introduced the office of the Director of Public Prosecution. So this introduces right here a political component. And the question will be asked, does the Attorney General have a discretion? Suppose the Attorney General determines it impacts a colleague or the Attorney General himself. Does the Attorney General have the authority to not apply for this order under this provision? And I ask that, it's not far-fetched. I was looking recently at a story in the Gleaner, a historic story, about one Judith Coke, when the Jamaican Prime Minister, Bruce Golding, faced serious questions when he refused to sign an extradition order. Ultimately, he had to step down. But this raises questions that politicians themselves can be the subject of scrutiny. We saw it in the Caribbean. Sorry? Yes.
Honorable member,
Yes.
can you give this?
Yes, it's the date of this is, oh, let's see it. I don't have the date on that. It's the Daily Gleaner. It's a Jamaican Gleaner. And I don't have the date on that. I'll have to get that date. Oh, 3rd of October, 2011. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker, no person should be exempt from these provisions and instead be given effectively carte blanche powers in theory, which is what this bill does, Speaker. The powers of this agency are, as described in Clause 28, is for warrants, possibly, and give powers for warrants. And I have a concern about the issue of warrants. Does this extend to lawyers? There should have been an exclusive, a specific exclusion for lawyers who have legal privilege under our law. But it does not have that provision, and I am concerned about that, and I want to flag that for this government. You're the only one with interest in everything, you know, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, it's legal privilege, Mr. Speaker. So I want to flag that legal privilege for lawyers and the execution of warrants. This has to be carefully spelled out. The functions of this agency are spelled out in Clause 5 and include collecting information and intelligence by investigation or otherwise. What is otherwise? We have a concern about that. What do you mean by or otherwise? Speaker, the functions include analyzing and retaining information and intelligence related to activities that may reasonably be suspected to be threats to the security of the Bahamas, to coordinate intelligence gathering, cooperate with and assist enforcement agencies in the gathering or provision of intelligence. The reason for this agency, Mr. Speaker, is to militate, from what we can read, against what is called threats of security, as defined in the definition. Sorry, let me just read what they say is threats to security or security threat means any act of terrorism, espionage or sabotage by any agent or foreign power or foreign interest, activities relating to the Bahamas directed toward or in support of the threat or use of acts of serious violence against persons or property for the purpose of achieving a political, religious, or ideological objective. And this is what I really want to refer to. Activities intended to, 1, undermine by covert or unlawful acts. And in the prior bill, it had covert, unlawful acts. But you've separated now, so you now have covert or unlawful acts. To destroy or overthrow by violence the constitutionally established system of government in the Bahamas or any foreign state. Now this is, excuse me, it does not include lawful advocacy, protest, or dissent, lawful advocacy, lawful protest, lawful dissent, unless carried out in conjunction with any of the activities referred to in paragraph excuse me, A to C in this paragraph. Does this lawful advocacy, lawful protest, and lawful dissent, this is an interesting distinction that's now being made in this bill. Because how will this fit in now? The occupation we saw a couple of years ago of Rawson Square without permission. What about the blocking of the Paradise Island Bridge? I think the member for Kalani was right there. He would know about this. Was that lawful? What about that fence that was pulled down on Paradise Island Bridge? I believe Kalani might have been there for that too. These are not lawful acts. Are they legitimate? Does this bill now open a can of worms to go and look or to investigate the likes of the Prime Minister or the member for Kalani who engaged in such activities which don't appear to be lawful? Speaker? With such wide-ranging and perhaps even draconian powers, and especially ones that are shrouded in secrecy, the definition of these threats are too broad. And then further, the minister, as I said, has been given powers to extend these offenses. So, I mean, the offense could, in theory, include trespassing. It could in theory, because the minister has carte blanche under this bill to do it and without bringing it to Parliament. He can just sit in his office and make new regulations. This is not acceptable. And so this first schedule and this provision that allows for the minister to add new offenses potentially opens a floodgate of potential offenses that could be implicated in these threats. We note also the bill anticipates regulations which have yet to be laid in draft form. It is therefore impossible to properly assess or analyze the efficacy of these provisions in the absence of regulations. We on the opposition say the bill cannot be properly assessed or debated and certainly cannot be made law in the absence of these regulations. And we advance here and now that it should not proceed in these circumstances. This is a serious matter. It touches and concerns the freedoms of the individual, and it is expected that a responsible and accountable government will behave accordingly. This agency is to be headed by a director, and it is ironic that in describing the functions of that director, Clause 8, it speaks of the role of the director in ensuring that the agency is kept free from any influences or considerations not relevant to its function, and nothing is done which might lend support to any suggestion that it is concerned to further or protect the interests of any particular section of the community, political party, etc. That's the role of the director. He's admonished not to do that. But ironically, immediately thereafter in subclause 2, it says the director shall be subject to the directions of the minister. Directions of the minister of a general or specific nature to be observed. To be observed. Look at that language. Directions to be observed by the minister of a general or specific nature. Observe the relation to the performance by the agency of its function or the exercise of powers of the director. And it says that a copy of the directions of the minister given to, by the minister is given to the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition and the Review Committee, but it is essentially kept secret. And the purported admonition to oust political involvement that I just referred to, but the director is not supposed to exercise his powers in that way, even though he takes the directive of his minister, is further weakened by the process for the appointment of the director himself. You can barely imagine the severe agitation in the public's mind for a law which gives vast powers to a secret agency which is led by a politician and takes, or led by a director that takes directives from a politician. Sorry? Yes, we were there. I was there. And we didn't use election. The language of the prior bill was guidance, guidelines for the operation. This one is direction, which is a different meaning. Speaker, no. I can get to that. Don't use my time. Speaker, this in it. And Speaker, this in itself raises concern, but these fears and concerns are set aflame when we see the further political involvement and control of the Prime Minister in this bill, and the Minister of National Security in other respects, not just in the appointment of the director and in the directions. Speaker, in the processes and powers under the bill, this is exacerbated by the fact that provisions essentially exclude scrutiny of the Prime Minister, and possibly the Minister and the Attorney General's role may also be excluded, Speaker. And Speaker, there's an interesting case, and I don't want to, because my time is running short, but there is a case I want to bring to the attention of the government. It's called R on the application of Privacy International Appellant, Investigatory Powers Tribunals, and other respondents. I want to urge the government to look at this case out of the Supreme Court in England, recently done in the last couple of weeks, which shows very clearly the weight put in that country on assuring accountability for the exercise of these types of powers, and the numerous tiers and the layers of accountability and scrutiny, including of agencies of this nature. The case is R on the application of Privacy International Appellant against Investigatory Powers Tribunal and others. So you get an idea of what I can only call a slack approach that's happening right now in this Parliament.
Honorable member.
Yes.
Is there a citation?
Sorry?
Is there a citation included with the name?
Speaker, can I take it afterwards? I'm losing my time, Speaker. Okay. Speaker,
Okay. Honorable member, would you be willing to table it?
I will table it. I can do that. I'm just trying to
Thank you.
my time being used, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you. In this bill, there are instances of absolute control of the provisions of the powers and intrusions by the Prime Minister, and shows an incredible lack of accountability in this bill. The proposed agency lacks independence and autonomy, and is subject to political control, as I've indicated, by its appointment, by its directions, and is therefore amenable to abuses and violations of the fundamental rights and freedoms of which I spoke, and can become a political tool. This is unacceptable and will not be supported by us in this House, and let me just tell you, nor the Bahamian people at large. Every day, you hear the national conversation of serious concerns of alleged abuses, even now, alleged abuses of police powers, which they are circumscribed by law. So it is important that public confidence is bolstered in law enforcement agencies and in this agency. It's important to note that the primary law enforcement agency in this country is the Royal Bahamas Police Force, whose defined powers are contained in a number of laws. That critical agency is headed by a commissioner of police, whose independence in carrying out his function is protected in the Constitution, which deal with the appointment and termination of the commissioner. In the creation of this new agency, this one we're debating today, similar law enforcement powers are given to this agency, and wide-ranging powers shrouded in secrecy, with the head of that agency, the director, being selected by the Prime Minister with his only obligation being to consult with the leader of the opposition, with no security of tenure, as in the case of the Commissioner of Police. And this raises serious questions about the constitutionality of these provisions. Indeed, in theory, these provisions can allow for the Prime Minister to choose someone and maintain control by the spect of not renewing the contract of that person after 5 years, which implies influence and control. In fact, this is the very reason these provisions are in the Constitution. This is not acceptable, and provisions must be put in place for transparency in the selection process, which can be more greatly achieved by the law requiring the concurrence of the opposition and not mere consultation. And for the protection of tenure of this director, as is the case for police and judges. But no, they want to keep this director on the leash, Speaker, and to only be removed in defined circumstances and with transparent procedures. Further, it is arguable that the minister through this agency and his director will have indirect control of activities in multiple law enforcement agencies, including the police, which is also protected by the Constitution. And this is for us a fundamental objection. The involvement of politicians in the administration and work of this agency and its extensive intrusive powers shrouded in secrecy is astounding. This is contrary to the fundamental spirit of our Constitution. And while the director is not accountable under this act, his subordinates are accountable to the director of public prosecutions. So there's no accountability for the minister, for the prime minister, for the attorney general, for the director, and you have layers of lack of accountability, except the average citizen who will be subject to these oppressive laws, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister features, as I said, prominently in powers under this bill. As previously noted, he in practical terms single-handedly chooses the director. No concurrence required of the leader of the opposition. While the bill provides for a review committee to review operations of the agency as a purported check and balance, that committee is 7 MPs, 5 government, 6 government, sorry, 4 in the Parliament, 5 in the Parliament, 4 which are government, 1 which is opposition, and 1 each in the Senate. Despite what the proportionate makeup is at any given time in that Parliament, this is not a reliable check and balance, Mr. Speaker. Under Section 18, while that committee is mandated to make annual reports to Parliament, the Prime Minister has to see it first. And such matter must be excluded from any report if the Prime Minister, after consultation with the review committee, considers that the matter would be prejudicial to the continued discharge. So even the reports late, the Prime Minister can extract or stop an exposure of that report. This appears to give almost absolute unfettered powers to a Prime Minister. The committee is also responsible for complaints and the disclosure of reports of such complaints. Speaker, and its disclosure of such complaints is also constrained. So you could make a complaint about some abuse by this agency, but clause 24 says that there is no obligation to publish. Sorry. The other purported scrutiny is by clause 40. And I'm going to let the minister and prime minister, I'm going to let my colleagues who speak next to draw the other issues. But I will summarize. The minister and prime minister can, in theory, interfere with the operations of the police and this agency and threaten the independence of this agency and other agencies. Far too much power is vested in the executive in this bill and could be used by the government for its own political agenda. The functions and operations of the bill lack independence, transparency, accountability of political figures and others, undermines the objectives of the bill. The objectives of the bill is to prevent threats to security, and this is so because the vulnerability and gaps are disastrous to civil liberties, freedoms, our Constitution, and the rule of law. So if you get what I'm saying to you, this bill itself is a threat to the security of this country. Mr. Speaker, it is a state of affairs which is itself a threat to the security of the Bahamas. Non-transparent, no accountability, wide room for political involvement, huge powers, secrecy, and you have the powers of the Prime Minister and the Minister being above the fray, Mr. Speaker. The danger of this law being used for political purposes is ever present, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to raise a question on the identity card. I saw the Prime Minister spoke about it, and I think the Minister Attorney Press also spoke about it. And I want to alert the government to, and this is taken from the Gleaner on the 13th of April 2019, a key plank of legislation championed by the Police administration was yesterday struck down as unconstitutional, delivering a body blow to the government's identity law and offering vindication to critics who deemed it illegal and an overreach of state authority. The government pressed ahead with the passage of the legislation despite appeals for more consultation. They sound like something like yours. Arguing at the National Identification System, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to say that I see that the Minister of Finance said that these cards would be produced or with assistance of GIDC. And yes, this is a report of the Tribune on the 28th of June, 2018. You may read it? The government intends to create a single digital ID identification for citizens of the Bahamas to make online access to services seamless and more efficient to reduce government costs, Deputy Prime Minister Peter Turnquest revealed. The government will be seeking assistance from new tech firm GIDC Digital to assist it with putting in place a cyber security system to ensure data privacy and security of the ID system. You forget it. 2 years is a long time, boy. This is from the Tribune, and this wasn't even 2 years. This wasn't even a year. 28th of June, 2018. With nothing to address, that's what you said. I'm just alerting the government. I'm adopting it, yes. It's from the Tribune. You didn't hear me say that? From the Tribune. Okay. Yeah, but you see it. The date on it is the 28th of June, 2018. The reporter is Denise Maycock in the Tribune. I'm just asking because I heard that company had some little issues, and I'm wondering if we still could be relying on them. But the Speaker, so I get, the Speaker, and I just end by saying, Mr. Speaker, that the importance of the card, they seem to have similar constitutional import about rights to privacy. And so I would just alert the government before you go out in rolling out this card, that you engage in the appropriate consultation with the Bahamian people. Don't be like the Jamaican government, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, in this present form, we do not support this legislation. It lacks transparency, accountability, and it is a dangerous piece of legislation in its current form, particularly with the most recent changes made by this government, which allows the minister to direct the agency, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to leave, Mr. Speaker. Today is what day, dear? Oh, May. Thank you.
Order that the document be brought up. Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the Honorable Member.
Article which is not Okay?
O- Order that this document, the case R on the application of the Privacy International appellant versus the investigatory powers tribunal and others do lie on the table. As many, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Seabreeze.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we're here to do the serious business of the people of the Bahamas, and certainly I am grateful to the Lord himself and to the people of Seabreeze for reposing confidence in me to be able to stand here today to support this very important piece of legislation that would do well for the protection, for the safety of the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, we are approaching the hallmark of our 46 years of independence as a nation. That being said, Mr. Speaker, the caption of a letter in the Tribune by one Bishop Simeon Hall caught my attention. Why national interest?
Honorable member, give the date.
I'm going to give the date right now, Mr. Speaker. I'm just giving the caption. I'm not going into the content. Yes. So I will give the caption and the date, Mr. Speaker. So it's by one Bishop Simeon Hall. He's the author, and the caption is "Why National Interest and Sovereignty Must Prevail." Mr. Speaker, the article featured on page 4 is dated at May 22nd, 2019. Mr. Speaker, while I do not on this occasion adopt its contents because it's not the subject of this debate, I acknowledge that it is a well-captioned phrase, Mr. Speaker, and timely to this debate. Today we are here to debate a bill in the national interest of the people, and I will add by saying our unequivocal commitment to ensuring the good of the nation must prevail. Mr. Speaker, I wish to begin by celebrating the men and women as I support this very important and significant and landmark piece of legislation. The men and women of the Royal Bahamas Police Force, and acknowledge the work that they do to sacrifice the sacrifices they make and to honor their decision to answer the call of service. I wish to also commend the member for Mount Moriah and Minister of National Security, who leads the charge of law enforcement, and the Commissioner of Police, whose responsibility it is to execute those charges. Mr. Speaker, we must be clear that not everyone can do the work of a police officer, let alone a commissioner. This is why only one of about 3,000 for any period can be selected for that role. And Mr. Speaker, I am a believer that promotion comes from God. If one is going to be effective and find joy and peace in the role such as a police officer, as well as with many other callings, one must be committed to the task. Policing, not just a job. I want to repeat that, Mr. Speaker. Policing is not just a job. And anyone who enlists with that approach will get a rude awakening and will find that they will be disappointed. After 11 years of service, I can tell you that as with pastoring and with serving as a politician, it is a call to service. You must be committed, and this must be demonstrated. And certainly, if any man's work abide, he shall receive his reward. Mr. Speaker, Seabreeze finds it our duty to support this very important, what I term, people-centered bill. Mr. Speaker, this is not a woulda, coulda, shoulda, didn't philosophy. It is a real piece of document on the table for introduction, debate, and passage by the legislature. It's very important to appreciate, Mr. Speaker. Can I say that again? It's not a woulda, coulda, shoulda, didn't, never did philosophy, but it's a real document that is on the table for the introduction, debate, and passage of the legislature. Mr. Speaker, we are here today to do the people's business. And this bill is not about us individually, but about our nation as a collective, about our children, our youth, and our families. Mr. Speaker, we cannot say one thing and do another. The children, the people are watching. And so, Mr. Speaker, because I recognize on behalf of Seabreeze that my constituency, and certainly the ministry for which I've been given portfolio, youth, sports, and culture, must be counted in the numbers of those who take the work of the people seriously. I am here to participate and support this people-centered bill. Mr. Speaker, the long title reads, and I quote, "A bill for an act to establish a body to be known as the National Criminal Intelligence Agency to provide for its functions, powers, organization, and management, and for connected purposes." In this regard, Mr. Speaker, sections 4, 5, 6, and 7 I find instructive. Mr. Speaker, this bill is no ordinary run-of-the-mill. It speaks to us as a nation. And when we say nation, we mean the whole. We are one, Mr. Speaker. From Bimini in the north to Niagara in the south. From Long Island to Exuma, we are one. Therefore, it is the duty for every Bahamian to the entire citizenry, that is, to be on board, to recognize the significance of a government actually passing and enforcing this type of legislation to enhance the efforts of its law enforcement arm to protect the nation. To protect the nation, to detect and prevent crime throughout the country, to deter perpetrators, and to preserve the peace. To ensure that every person living and visiting our shores understand that this is our land, and we will live in our land, and our people will work in this land, and our children will play in this land in peace. Mr. Speaker, I am one of those advocates that make no apology. We must every day renew our commitment to the resolve to eradicate crime. I did not say reduce. I did not say minimize. I said eradicate crime and the criminal elements, to diminish criminal mindset, to relinquish criminal activity, and to disrupt criminal behavior. We must dismantle every criminal organization that threatens the safety of our children and our people. Mr. Speaker, as Minister of Youth, Sports, and Culture, I dare say that the young people are depending on us to provide that example, that they can trust and that they can follow. And our legacy of being a peaceful people and the reputation of being a tranquil destination, our livelihood is threatened if we do not or cannot demolish the criminal elements among us. Mr. Speaker, or criminal activities rather among us. Mr. Speaker, this bill is imperative to our survival as a nation. Mr. Speaker, having responsibility to facilitate programs for the greatest segment of the population, which is our youth, it is a mammoth task. Because at that level, they are perhaps, Mr. Speaker, they are perhaps less able to contribute to the piggy bank because of their limited ability to work or limited experience to land well-paying jobs, or naturally, their limited knowledge because of their youthfulness. However, Mr. Speaker, we were all young and we needed and required that investment in us so that we can be where we are today. It was the previous government's implementation of the police cadet programs, the technical cadet corps program, the nursing program, the medical and legal programs that have benefited young people. And because of yesterday's investment by government, from primary school to secondary school to tertiary level, I can say, Mr. Speaker, I am here today to give back to a country that has given so much to me. Mr. Speaker, when our parents could not afford it, our government did. And I appreciate a government that takes serious and strategic steps to invest in young people. Mr. Speaker, because I am a product of an element of National Youth Service and many of my contemporaries, I know the value it can bring to our society and to our young people, and how it can prevent a young person from being lured into a life of criminal activity and idle time. Mr. Speaker, as a former police cadet, I received a stipend, and truth be told, Mr. Speaker, it made the program more attractive. It lured my short-term needs to secure my long-term development. But Mr. Speaker, that is what leadership is all about. It's about vision and faith, acting on things hoped for and the evidence of things not yet seen. Truth is, Mr. Speaker, young people are young and they are vulnerable. They will make mistakes and even bad choice. I believe it's very important, Mr. Speaker, that I say that again in this house. Young people are, as the word says, young and they are vulnerable. They will make mistakes and even bad choices, as we all have. But we as a government and leaders of the nation, which include other civic organizations, must be willing to work together to provide national programs and projects for our young people to preserve them in those challenging years, I would say between ages 12 and 20 specifically. Mr. Speaker, together we stand, divided we fall. Everyone seems to want, Mr. Speaker, from what I have seen, their own kingdom. But we must find a way to streamline and harmonize youth work in a system that is measurable and at a national level and according to global standards and best international practices. Mr. Speaker, if we can catch them during the stage when the psychologists have concluded they experience identity crisis and peer pressure, it bodes well for our future. But we must appreciate that it is about us as a nation and not about any particular household, organization, or individual. Mr. Speaker, this bill again echoes the declaration of the police over the ages. Crime does not and will not pay. And I am confident that this agency is going to play a pivotal role in upholding our national flag under that declaration. Crime does not and will not pay. Mr. Speaker, this people-centered bill reminds me of the words of a song in confronting one's opponents, and in the context, and in this context, the criminal element. The higher you build your barrier, the taller I become. The further you take my rights away, the faster I will run. You can deny me, you can decide to take my rights away, no matter cause there's something inside so strong. And Mr. Speaker, the black in our flag as designed by Mr. Herbert Bain is demonstrative of the strength and unity and the resolve of the Bahamian people, that when it comes to a matter affecting our nation, when it comes to a matter affecting our security, when it comes to a matter affecting our youth and our children and our families, when it comes to us as a people, we are one. Mr. Speaker, this agency will demonstrate to criminals that the harder they come, the harder they will fall. It is important, Mr. Speaker, that our thoughts, it is important, Mr. Speaker, that our thoughts are not skewed based on, and I want to say this very, very carefully, it is important that our thoughts, Bahamians, are not skewed by misinformation, innuendos, propaganda, scare tactics. Mr. Speaker, this is so important for us to understand and focus on what is before us. This bill is in the national interest. It is in the people's interest. Mr. Speaker, all and sundry knows that under Section 78, subsection 3 of the Constitution, the powers of the Attorney General is exclusive and independent and cannot be fettered by any person or organization. Mr. Speaker, this is bravery on the part of this government and its Minister of National Security to do the right thing and to do it the right way. Mr. Speaker, this is no rogue operation. Today, we bring our intentions to the people and we seek the support of the nation in doing the right thing. This is a government, Mr. Speaker, that is demonstrating a commitment to transparency, productivity, and national development. I will add the revelation of my colleague, the good member from Mount Moriah. This bill ensures cultural development. Mr. Speaker, the purpose of this agency as provided in its objects and reasons is to gather intelligence that impacts the security of our nation. The work of the agency requires the brightest minds and the bravest officers to fulfill the task of coordinating intelligence, gathering, and joint strategic planning among the various law enforcement agencies and government departments so as to ensure a more effective campaign against crime. Further, to collect information and with respect to activities that may constitute a threat to the security of our country and to coordinate effective networking between regional and international partners. Mr. Speaker, this is some heavy stuff today. Mr. Speaker, what I appreciate about this bill is that it is all-encompassing. It speaks to purpose. It speaks to process. It speaks to procedure. Mr. Speaker, this is no rogue operation. It will be headed by a director appointed by the Governor General. We have to respect the Governor General and that office. Appointed by the Governor General on the advice of the leader of the country. We must respect the leader of the country, the Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and get this, Mr. Speaker, who shall consult with the leader of the opposition. Mr. Speaker, the word shall in this section, as you know, Mr. Speaker, and I think all officers of the court know that this is instructive. Section 7 is a very important term. Shall is a very important term. It means that the Prime Minister will not make a recommendation without respectfully consulting the leader of the opposition. And finally, the Governor General makes the decision. Mr. Speaker, that's a clear process. That's a transparent process. Mr. Speaker, that's a process we can trust. Mr. Speaker, this bill is ensuring that an apolitical approach is adopted in the selection of the head of the unit. Hence, we can be confident that notwithstanding which political directorate is at the helm, but recognizing that the Bahamian people have made it clear in their statement of their demand for good and reasonable government, the people can be confident in the leadership of the agency and in its mandate to be consistent in carrying out its duties, to execute its work under a standard of fairness. Mr. Speaker, it is important to understand that the very nature of intelligence often means that the successes will not be made public knowledge, at least not for many years. And this is for good reason, Mr. Speaker. Much like I find with the work of youth, sports, and culture in my former ministry, social services, the work of national intelligence is often a thankless situation. But it is for the leaders and those touched to know, to recognize, and acknowledge and reward the hard work of persons who work in thankless roles. But yet their function is crucial to the smooth operations of society. Mr. Speaker, people are the nucleus of a nation, and thus people are at the heart of this bill and are at the heart of this administration. Mr. Speaker, somebody missed that. I'm going to say it again. Mr. Speaker, people are the nucleus of a nation, and thus people are at the heart of this bill and are at the heart of this administration. Mr. Speaker, time is a declaration we made, and each passing day, I see it as a declaration we are and must continue to live up to. Mr. Speaker, an intelligence agency is no new phenomenon. In many countries around the world, it is the lead national agency against organized crime, human weapon and drug trafficking, cybercrime, and economic crime. Its strategic role is to look at the bigger picture. Speaker, this is very important that we look at the bigger picture here. Analyzing how criminals operate and how they can be disrupted. This is why it is said it requires the best and brightest minds of the law enforcement regime. Mr. Speaker, I must stand here, and I think a few of us in here are officers of the court. We know very well, I think North Abaco knows this, and South Beach knows this, Golden Gate. We know that we cannot advance arguments that are unsupported, unsubstantiated. We must advance reasonable facts and information. Mr. Speaker, it is against, Mr. Speaker, you yourself know this, it is against ethical principles to do so. And so that is why we are here, to bring the evidence and to bring the facts and to lay it on the table. Mr. Speaker, I am one who believes it is crucial that such an arena or such an area is properly outfitted, primarily by trained police officers who have vowed their commitment to serving country and understands that if they fail to comply, they say in the police force and then complain. I think the good member for Southern Shores knows the quarter guard awaits their residency. Mr. Speaker, intelligence is one that must be taken very seriously. And protecting the officers, protecting information and informants is equally as serious. This agency must have all the tools necessary to function independently if need be. In many instances, Mr. Speaker, an agency such as this only reports, in many instances, an agency at this level reports to the Prime Minister or his designate and at his direction. This is how serious the work of an NCIA is, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to say right here and now, if a country cannot trust its Prime Minister, then it would be in serious trouble. Mr. Speaker, this is why we must keep steady and trusted hands at the wheel. Mr. Speaker, I am persuaded that we are in good hands. We have a leader we can trust, we can depend on, and we can rely upon. Steady as she goes. Mr. Speaker, the member for Kalani has been trained. Mr. Speaker, I must tell you, I came up in the 90s. The member for Kalani has been trained by who I saw as up to the best, former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram. And I am sure he is proud of his protege. Mr. Speaker, for many, the first characteristic of a good leader is one that you can trust, and that you can trust to do the right thing and make the best decision for the good of all, or at least the majority. Finally, Mr. Speaker, what is instructive to consider is assessing the role and effectiveness of as many agencies, not only in the police force, but throughout the public service, to determine whether each agency is fulfilling its mandate, whether it is relevant for today, whether it has the tools and resources inclusive of human, material, and capital resources to carry out its mandate, and whether having what is necessary and required, it is fulfilling its role to effectively and adding to the overall growth and development of this nation. Mr. Speaker, truth is some systems and operations are indeed antiquated and even may require investment in upgrade. Mr. Speaker, upgrades, I want to say here, don't only refer to technology and related apparatus. Some upgrades are to organizations' human capacity. Mr. Speaker, in too many organizations, the same persons go on courses each year and do not share any information with colleagues upon their return. I do have challenges with favoritism and unfair practices in any workplace. It is instructive to note that implementation, monitoring, and fairness are watchwords of the international community today. Mr. Speaker, some institutions may require newly qualified personnel, and to do this, the organization must make room for new talent, new mindset, and new approaches. Mr. Speaker, a bill like this is forward-thinking, and this is reflective of the characteristics of my colleague, the good member from Mount Moriah. Mr. Speaker, a number of people don't know, but many of us in here are family, you know. He has been my neighbor, a fellow officer, and a colleague that I have known for many years. He is one of those, you would say, don't take no mess. Mr. Speaker, and again, I want to commend the Honorable Member for Kalani, our Prime Minister, for his resilience and commitment to his decision to have selected what I agree as the best man for the job in the person of the Honorable Marvin Dames. Mr. Speaker, supporting the National Crime Intelligence Agency bill and its work is everybody's business. It is to the benefit of every Bahamian today, tomorrow, and in the years to come. And having said all aforementioned, Mr. Speaker, Seabreeze supports this people-centered bill. May the good Lord continue to bless Seabreeze. May the good Lord continue to bless the people and the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Seabreeze supports.
As many, Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Bamboo Town. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Centerville. Just before you rise, Honorable Member for Bamboo Town, there was an issue earlier that I need to address and to point members to the rules as it relates to the adoption of reports. If we look at Rule 33.1, the manner and contents of speeches, it makes reference to a member who's referring to a newspaper having to adopt that newspaper. But if we look at Rule 83, subsection 7, it says, where a member quotes from a book, journal, paper, or document in his speech, if the speaker orders the member to do so, the member shall make it available to other members for use during the debate. Now, in this particular instance, the speaker did not order that the document be produced, but I just wanted to make it clear to all members that it is not simply enough to adopt. If the speaker orders you to produce it, you must produce. It's Rule 83, subsection 7. Okay. Where 83 subsection 7, where any member quotes from a book, journal, paper, or document in his speech, if the speaker orders the member to do so, the member shall make it available to other members for use during the debate.
Paper.
And paper, in my estimation, includes everything that is in paper form. And Mr. Clark, I'd like for you to make a note in your logbook that I am calling once again for the House Rules and Business Committee to convene the meeting to review, revise, and make recommendations to upgrade the rules, particularly as it relates to social media and the use of your cell phone to glean information while you are on your feet and to read it into the records. We need the rules to be updated. This is about the 5th time the chair is making the call for the committee to meet. So, from this point forward, every time I make the call, I want the clerk to make the law. So, 83, subsection 7, it's a section that deals with papers and documents. It's on page 69. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. We hear you and your request once again, Mr. Speaker, and we will be so guided by your request of that committee. And Mr. Speaker, I couldn't help but notice, though, before we take the luncheon break, that the father for the member for Seabreeze is present in the gallery, looking dapper as usual, and smiling from ear to ear, in complete agreement and adoration of his daughter's contribution. The great Amadar even stood to acknowledge such. And so, Mr. Speaker, with that, I do move that the House suspends until 3 p.m. for the luncheon break.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the business of this House do suspend until 3 p.m. this afternoon. All members who are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The business of this House stands suspended until 3 p.m. this afternoon.